Hey everyone, welcome. You're joining us as we're kvetching about the failure of our infrastructure and when it comes to climate change and flying. It has grounded Lev, who's in DC, and we have Zev. We have Zev, Lev, and Waj, the new punk rock band. Lev Parnas, Zev Shalev. Folks, follow him on Subscribe. Zev Shalev has been following the Epstein money scandal for more than a decade. He's on Narrative. Subscribe to Substack, and Lev Parnas used to be Trump's fixer. He's a man who knew all these bad people, paid the price, was incarcerated, has come out since then and tried his best to warn people about the end game of not just Donald Trump and MAGA. He's on Lev Remembers. And we had this planned 2 days ago, folks, but we have two pieces of breaking news that even Lev and Zev and I did not anticipate. So we're going to start with the breaking news, and then we're going to go a bit deeper. The first piece of breaking news. What not to do during a scandal. How to be an example of the Barbra Streisand effect. Ghislaine Maxwell,
Yeah.
who is part and parcel of Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking scandal, who was completely complicit, a supervillain. That Ghislaine Maxwell, folks, just about an hour and a half ago, we learned that Ghislaine Maxwell, who spent 2 days with Todd Blanche under a shroud of secrecy, Todd Blanche, who was Donald Trump's personal attorney, now in the Attorney General's office, that Ghislaine Maxwell, who after 2 days of speaking to Todd Blanche, we still don't know what was discussed. Her lawyers came out and appealed to Donald Trump and the Supreme Court to give her a commutation and pardon. That Ghislaine Maxwell has just been moved to a minimum security prison for women in Texas.
The prison camp. The camp.
Prison camp.
Yes.
A minimum security prison camp. She was serving a 20-year prison sentence in Florida. So, Zev, your thoughts first about the miraculous timing of what's happened here.
Well, we all know what's going on, right? I mean, there's clearly a negotiation happening between the DOJ and Ghislaine Maxwell's team to try and figure out how they can spin Jeffrey Epstein to not touch Donald Trump and then give her some sort of commutation or some sort of pardon. I mean, this is about as clear as anything. I've never seen something like this play out in daylight. And it's, here it is. They're not even trying to hide the fact that they're doing it, but they're doing it. This is clearly where we're going.
I mean, I'm so glad you mentioned that. It's so naked. It's so shameless. And I think the timeline because what's common to us isn't common to everyone. I know people are overwhelmed. There's so much news that's happening today. But again, folks, just literally last week, not just last week, a couple of days ago, Todd Blanche was sent to meet Ghislaine Maxwell. She was given limited immunity. We don't know what was discussed. She was with him for 2 days. And then right after those 2 days, literally openly, Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney is tweeting with Todd Blanche on Twitter that we could see on our own eyes and openly appealing to both Donald Trump and Supreme Court. And then I think it was yesterday we got a news a leak that said that Ghislaine Maxwell will only speak if she gets a commutation or pardoning of a sentence. And then today,
and she gets the questions ahead of time. By the way, she needs the questions ahead of time because she's got to be prepared. You can't.
Lev, you have sources. Sometimes your sources tell you stuff. Sometimes they don't. But this must be shocking even to you.
I hate to say it, Waj, not really. I want to quote something from somebody that wrote, this was like about a week ago, a little over. There was an article written, breaking, Trump and Blanche finalized the narrative. And the quote in there goes, they'll quietly move Maxwell to another prison with better conditions. That's the first step. Then she'll play ball. She'll cooperate, not for the victims, but for Donald Trump, for the cover-up. And for once the story is in place, she'll be gone. Witness protection, early release, or a very quiet pardon. That's how they clean this up. The guy that wrote that was Lev Parnas on Lev Remembers about a week ago, a little over a week ago.
Lev is allowed to. Lev, you can be like Incredible Hulk and quote and talk about yourself in the third person. Okay,
I just have to get that out there, Watch. But no, what I'm saying
it's fine. You could flex a little bit.
No, It wasn't even about that. The reason why I did is because you asked the question, am I surprised? I'm not, because what my sources are telling me now on a serious note, I know we were laughing a little bit, but this is very serious because what they are doing, they are actually, the plan is in motion. It's been in motion ever since Blanche met. Even the theatrics that you're talking about that are playing out between Comer from the the House Oversight Committee, James Comer to Marcus David Oscar Marcus, who's Maxwell's lawyer, and Todd Blanche. This is all coordinated. Just so any good lawyer out there, not even good bad, understands that you don't make those type of comments, demands from a president, from anybody, and especially in Maxwell's condition, unless you were told to do that. He was told to do that. My sources are saying this is coordinated by Blanche. Because the one thing you guys got to remember, and we did the same thing back in 2018, 19, but then it was John Solomon doing it.
Yeah.
Donald Trump likes to play things in the media. So Blanche is coordinating and telling because if you take a look at Marcus's letters, they're always very nice towards Donald Trump. We want to do everything. Donald Trump is opening it up, telling the truth, we're grateful. This is being coordinated by Blanche to tell them, because Blanche and Marcus have a tremendous relationship, to be able to play it out, prolong it, because in the meantime, first step, like I said, they moved her. That was the first step. I told you that was going to happen. Now she's getting more out of sight. Eventually, what my sources are saying to you, she's going to go into WITSAC inside the prison system. There's a special system there where you go into, and this is a way of not blowing up like the pardon, because once she goes in there, that's it. She's out of sight. She's in the federal, like it's a federal protection system, depending on what she's going to break. And as some of the things I broke yesterday on our show Unleashed, is what I'm hearing now, guys, is Trump is going to also, part of the narrative that they've put together is not only going to be names like Clinton and Summers, but there's also going to be some of Trump's own donors that are going to get thrown into the mix. He's going to give that base that meat, because that's the only way he has a way of trying to somehow take it off. It's not just going to be Democrats on that list. There will be nobody major that extremely close to Trump, but there will be some sacrifices made, and that's what's being played out right now. Which I'm hearing in the next probably 72 hours, we're going to have some really major breaking news.
Dev, I know you wanted to jump in.
Well, I just wanted to say that it's important that we remember that these guys work together. Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm hearing myself back at me. I'm sorry if that's happening to you. I don't know what that is. But these guys work together. They're part of the same network. They did the same. It's not a surprise that Virginia Giuffre came out of Mar-a-Lago, and it's not a surprise that Trump knew about the blackmail scheme and about the use of human trafficking as a means to get that blackmail all along. So it's not a surprise now that they're cooperating either. Like, it's not like they're adversarial; they're on the same side.
And they're on the same side. And there's another piece of breaking news. There's a lot to unpack with both of you all just said right now. But another piece of breaking news that was broken by Bloomberg about 4 hours ago was the FBI redacted Trump's name in the Epstein files. The Bureau's FOIA team, tasked with conducting a final review of the records, blacked out the names before higher-ups said last month that releasing the documents, quote, would not be appropriate or warranted. And I had a conversation with the great Allison from Mueller. She wrote about this, where her sources, FBI folks, anonymously said that they thought, they were doing legal work, and they thought they were doing investigative work when they found out, no, they were actually doing a cover-up and scrubbing Trump's names from it. But now this has been released by Bloomberg. So for me, for the timeline, folks, it's important. Wall Street Journal comes out with the P that says that Donald Trump was informed by Attorney General Pam Bondi in May that he was in the files. When ABC News asked him about a month and a half later, he lied, which means for the past 2 months, the Trump administration has been engaged in a cover-up. Furthermore, he knew Epstein really well. As we know that Michael Wolff has said that in the audio tapes with Jeffrey Epstein, that Epstein said that he was Donald Trump's closest friend. Donald Trump and Epstein contend that they're breaking out was over this real estate deal, right, in 2004, where Epstein brings Donald Trump and says, "Hey, I want your thoughts on this deal." Then Donald Trump stabs him in the back. Donald Trump stabs him in the back, bids higher on this property. He buys it, and then a Russian oligarch comes back and buys the property back from Donald Trump. Seems like money laundering, right? And
Yes.
then this was a big rift with Epstein and Trump. And then people also forget that Epstein was convicted and sentenced and in jail before Biden was elected in Trump's first administration, right?
Bill,
We all, yeah, and we also, and Bill Barr's father was the one who hired Jeffrey Epstein, a college dropout, to get that cushy teaching job in that private school in New York. Folks, also what we found out this week is that Donald Trump referred to Virginia Giuffre, who was a 16-year-old spa attendant who was working in Mar-a-Lago, as basically his property. And he said that, the major contention he had with Epstein was that he stole Virginia Giuffre from her. Virginia Giuffre's father was a long-term manager at Mar-a-Lago. Virginia Giuffre was only 16, working as a spa attendant at Mar-a-Lago when Ghislaine Maxwell saw her and then poached her, groomed her, took her to Epstein, where Virginia Giuffre said for the next 2 years she was passed around like a platter of fruit to other powerful men. And she also pointed at Prince Andrew. And she died by allegedly suicide in April, folks, right? So this is just this week. It just keeps blowing up. And as this is happening, another piece of news that the Wall Street Journal dropped was apparently going back to 2003, they were still really friendly with each other because Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday, right? That nude drawing of the woman with that really strange cryptic message to him, right? So these people knew each other in the late 80s, the 90s, the early aughts. They've been connected. They've been glued at the hip. Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files. He's getting more desperate. Drip, 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 drip. And go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, and on your show, Waj, me and you spoke about, we broke when we were debating the Wall Street Journal, when the article, we said that it was Maxwell that sent it to give him a message, and it's been confirmed. So the reason why, guys, and the reason I'm saying these things is definitely not to gloat, because I'm not here. None of us here are to do this some reality show. We're here to save our democracy. We might laugh, but it's all important for the message. The reason I'm making these points that we broke something on Waj's show, that I broke something in my love, that we broke something on Zev shows, because we have really good information that you need to follow. You need to see it. You need to follow. You need to subscribe. You need to make sure you spread the word. You need to, each and every one of you. The one thing I will ask you before we go any forward is, the easiest thing you could do is go tell 1, 3, 4 people to come in and join our platforms, to join Waj, to subscribe to Zev, to subscribe to myself and other independent journalists, because this is where your information is coming from. The mass media is starting to talk about now what we told you about a week ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago. And Zev, with Zev, it's years ago. And the information is important. The quicker you know information, the properly you could use it. And that's one of the things I was actually doing here, by the way, a little off subject, is meeting with some people in the Democratic Party and discussing to them, explaining to them that they need to start using this information properly in proper sectors to be able to start using it for votes, and not just running around there and trying to get some press coverage or get on CNN or MSNBC. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Waj.
No, not at all. I appreciate that. The last couple of weeks, folks, I've tried to bring on experts, people I think have been really great at connecting the dots. Vicky Ward, who's been following this for a while, Leland Nally of Mother Joe, called every single name. He called every single name in Epstein's 97-page book. That video has like 300,000 views. Zev, who's been on the money trail for a while. Lev, who has his sources. Zev, someone just asked this question, and if you can, because it's so much, right? It's so overwhelming. Can you, if you can, just give us a timeline? Just connect the dots for us. Give us a narrative.
Of which one? The whole timeline? I mean, there's so many. I can go.
Narrative of Trump Epstein, if you can, and it doesn't have to go into detail, just so people have a grounding.
You know what I'm going to take you back to, because I've been doing this research in the last few days, again, just revisiting it, to something called the Mount Kenya Safari Camp, which was a post-Watergate secret meeting that the Americans held with a bunch of their allied nations. And this was after Watergate, and they were no longer allowed to do any of these black ops.
Can I just tell you something, Zev? I'm sorry, you just mentioned Watergate twice. I'm sitting right now at the Watergate Hotel, by the way.
Ooh. Whoa.
How ironic
How
is this?
wild is that?
You get it. And by the way, is that once you're doing the other thing that everybody's asking, and
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you if you could go into, because I think it's extremely important with what's happening right now, is not even so much Trump's relationship with Epstein. I think we know that
Yeah.
they've been friends forever. I think Trump's relationship with Maxwell, which a
Oh yeah.
lot of people don't understand how far that goes back further than Epstein. That
Well,
their relationship and the connection, that I think that's extremely important to what's happening right now also. So go ahead, brother. I
it
just
is.
wanted
It
to
is.
jump
And
in.
there's all very interesting things. And, I'm glad you're also speaking to the Dems about this because they're about to face an onslaught of disinformation coming at them.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that they actually do start picking up on this stuff so they're armed with the right information to counter what's going to go on. But, so the Safari camp was Adnan Khashoggi's camp in Kenya. And this was the summit that all these nations got together and the CIA could no longer do these covert acts. So they were farming them out to private companies, to individuals, to their allies. And this is when the start of the sort of private intelligence industry began, which led to Iran-Contra, which led to the SNL crisis, which led to a whole lot of financial events happening in the United States, and also, these ops happening through third-party operatives in other countries. And what that gave rise to, along with Maxwell's collapse of the Soviet Union, the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. So I'm trying to do this very quickly, but it led to the Russians really starting to infect our capitalist system with their dirty money that came out of the Soviet Union. Their positioning was, and they thought this through over many decades, that if they could rig our capitalist system because of it's so open and so free, then they could collapse it from inside. And the way they rigged the system was through Jeffrey Epstein and through Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the money laundering guy for real estate, and Jeffrey Epstein was that money laundering guy for the markets and for various companies. And so by collapsing various industries that connected Lehman's or Bears or the SNL, they were able to not only cause major contractions in the market and the economy, they also benefited from the bailouts that happened afterwards. So they were stealing money from America as they were bailing out all these collapses and crashes that were induced by them. So it was very, very shrewd, and this happens over decades. And I'm busy trying to document it specifically so it's factually there. But it goes on and on and on and on. And so what you got over decades of time is trillions of dollars, maybe not trillions, but certainly multiple billions, more than hundreds of billions, being taken out of the American economy and causing all the huge debts and all the huge deficits that we have and all the nightmares that we've been having in terms of the market crashing over the last 40 years. It's all been due largely to these rigged sort of Russian infiltration of our capitalism. So that's one way of looking at it.
And another way of looking at it, if you can connect, if you can, the Maxwell piece, because the disinformation has already started. And I think I was on with Lev when I mentioned that Newsmax was already calling her a victim. And this week, her attorney in the appeal to Donald Trump and Supreme Court, and the attorney is very smart. He's doing this publicly on Twitter, praising Donald Trump, right, listening to his ego, said that Ghislaine was just a victim of this complex web. And I know that's not the case, that she is integral to the Trump-Epstein nexus. Can you just give people a type of grounding on that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Virginia Giuffre's family came out yesterday and did 2 interviews on CNN and MSNBC where they are vocal about what a monster Ghislaine was, and that Virginia told them that she was much worse than Epstein. She was, in terms of
Right.
the cruelty, in terms of the operational aspect of it, she was the one who was doing all that. She was the one calling the shots, and the cruelty that they underlined that she did to these young girls and sexual assaults is quite vast. So everyone should check out that interview with the family because they're distraught at the idea that this person that they've
right.
yeah, that means this person was sent to jail for really serious crimes, found guilty of really serious crimes, and the fact that she could be let off this horrific.
Just think about the crazy sick part is that literally right after the interview yesterday, today she gets moved to a jail for no apparent reason. You couldn't make up a reason right now for why somebody in Maxwell's position would be moved from a medium security prison to one of Club Fed's. Again, no reason whatsoever, literally the day after the interview, and a slap in the face. And that's why we need to keep her voices, keep saying her name. Make sure she's known. Make sure that, because it's so important to keep this in the media because of what they're doing. Go ahead,
There are
Zev. I'm sorry.
thousands and thousands of victims here potentially. You know, I mean, we're not talking about a small amount of people who are being victimized again as they're going through this process. As you know, and this is not easy stuff for them. They've been dealing with this for 20 years now, and now again they've got to go through this whole process again, having
Her
thought that they
brother
could.
was broken yesterday. Her
Yeah,
brother
yeah,
was holding on, I believe, to his wife's hand, and he was choked up, and he
yeah,
was like, it was a mixture of just rage, anger, sadness.
yeah,
I mean, again, folks, Virginia Giuffre died in April. Just
mm,
do the math. That's just 3 months.
yeah,
And she's a woman who endured so much. I mean, a very tough life. From the age of 16 onward, it's just been pain and misery. And then Donald Trump, the president of the United States, this week, incapable, twice. He was asked twice and he was incapable of talking about the victims. He was incapable of talking about Virginia Giuffre. He expanded on the dust up that he had with Epstein. They asked him about it when he was doing his tour in Scotland, and then he doubled down on it. And instead of just reading prepared remarks, folks, I think it reveals the ghoulishness and the vulgarity of Donald Trump's character or lack thereof. That he said, "Yeah, he stole her from me." He was referring to 16-year-old Virginia Giuffre, who was a
yeah.
spa attendant who she says, her words, was passed around like a platter of fruit by Epstein, Maxwell, and others to all these powerful men. And by the way, no man has been held accountable. The only person in prison is Ghislaine Maxwell, and I'm glad, Lev, you mentioned that because it's happening out in the open, literally out in the open. There's no reason for Ghislaine Maxwell, who was complicit with Jeffrey Epstein in the abuse of women, not just the grooming of women, the recruitment of women. The Farmer sisters, whom Vicky Ward interviewed, said that Ghislaine also abused along
Yep.
with
Yep.
Epstein, the
Yeah.
girl, right? Like,
Yeah.
so in addition to stalking them, grooming them, passing them around, she also then abused them with Epstein. I think that's why it's so important because we might just dismiss it. But why the hell is this administration allowing a pedophile or a person who's complicit in pedophilia to literally be moved to a kind of sweetheart club fed type of prison in Texas? I mean, that alone, Lev, should be like, aren't you
Yep.
supposed to be tough on crime? Why are you pro pedophilia? I mean, if I'm a Democrat, I will be all over this. Like, why is this woman being sent to a minimum security Texas camp? Lev.
Oh, I mean, this should be right now. We should be ringing the alarms. Every Democrat, should be right now ringing the alarms like it's no tomorrow. We should have cameras, spotlights there. We should keep the spotlight on and make sure that they don't get away. But I'm going to say something else interesting because I tell you guys because a lot of people that don't know Trump miss these little things that I need you to understand how sick this perverted man is. He never in his interviews ever comes out and says one decent thing about the victims. He never says anything. It's always about defending him and defending Epstein, defending Maxwell, wishing her well. Talking about he doesn't come out and says even when they mention, even when he makes say something like this, so he never comes out and says those poor victims. It's always about defending himself. It's always about he doesn't even consider. He's never even once said, just think about it, like, let me have the victims at the White House. Let me hear what they have to say, how they want. Like, I'm just giving you an example. There's so many different things. It's never about, and that's why it's so important to understand how
Such a good
deep,
point.
how sick this cover up and how sick he is, and
Yeah.
how he shows it to you, how his how he even unintentionally shows you what he's all about by the way he says. And the people that defend him say, "Oh, it's locker room talk." Guys, I've been to lots of locker rooms. That's fucking bullshit. Excuse me. That's bullshit. There is that doesn't when you talk about girls, women, I mean that's not that's sick, perverted stuff that comes out of people mouth. Normal people don't talk about stuff like that. They don't joke about it. It's not funny. So I just wanted to mention that about Donald Trump. He never mentions the victims.
And he
Zeph,
he
go ahead.
knew, right? I mean, the whole thing about the confession he supposedly made on the Air Force One, saying that Jeffrey Epstein stole Virginia Giuffre from him. Well, he didn't do anything about it. He could have reported it to the police if he knew that there was a predator ring and that Jeffrey Epstein was out there stealing his employees. He said
Right.
multiple girls. Why didn't he stop it? He didn't do anything about it, which means he was not only aware of it, he was probably complicit in it because as I was saying, this is the same network. The same network is operating here. If the blackmail scheme was protecting Jeffrey Epstein, it was also protecting Donald Trump. And so that's why they were such good friends. They not only, did business together on occasion, but they also relied on the same funding sources, the same bank. Deutsche Bank was their bank, which was also
What
money.
year was that? What year was that? The Deutsche Bank scandal.
Well, the Deutsche Bank. So there's a couple. The big one. They started in 2013. They joined Deutsche Bank together in 2013 when no other banks would give them money. So in 2013, both Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein on the same day landed up having their banking revived by Deutsche Bank, which had just been finished in the previous 4 or 5 years. Had just been involved, I think from 2012 to 2015, had been involved in a giant money laundering scheme with the Russians. It was a mirror scheme held out of Moscow, and they were doing sort of trades that were mirrored in the West. It's kind of complicated, but the point is that there were Russian money laundering front, and which means the Russians were involved with them, which means Putin was probably involved with it. In fact, we know that Putin and the head of Deutsche Bank, Ackerman, had a deal with VTB, the Russian bank that is aligned with Putin. So there's a lot of interesting, thinking around, well, how come this particular bank, with all its Russian money ties, is funding Jeffrey Epstein, is funding Donald Trump, and also the Kushner family?
And can you go back, and because we talked recently,
yeah.
And you talked about this on the show for people who are joining us now. Heidi said what a lot of people are saying. Wait, did you just say the same date?
Yeah, the same date, and you'll appreciate the significance of this, Lev, because it was on August 19th that 2013, if I've got the date correct, I hope I do, that they both joined. That Epstein came on board to Deutsche Bank, and that Deutsche Bank revived the relationship with Donald Trump. And that date is the same date that the original coup against Gorbachev I don't remember, was it 91? When was that? I don't know. It must have been 91.
91.
Yeah, the same date that coup started is the same date that these guys joined Deutsche Bank, which, some people are speculating is a sign from the Russians basically saying, this has been us all along. There's been a calling card, sort of to leave the state behind.
Well, I'd be curious if I don't know if or maybe you could look into. We could dig in a little further, because that's some interesting thing you said. Is who was the investment banker that was dealing with Epstein and with Trump? Was it the same person, or
there was the same person, and he landed up dead, right? So there's one guy from Deutsche Bank who's landed up dead.
They all end up dead. They all end up dead.
I mean, this is the guy who would have known a lot of the business, and he landed up, in a suicide attempt. Thomas Bowers, I think, was his name.
So Thomas Bowers opened an account for both of them on that same day.
He was the head of private wealth at the time. So he was at the same date that they were being rejuvenated, I guess. I don't know what the expression would be. Right. On that same date is when Thomas Bowers, he was the guy in charge. And then Verablik, I think was the name, Rosemary Verablik, or something like that, was Kushner's main banker, and she was the reason that Trump was brought back on. So he also landed up working with her down the line. But it's very coincidental, or it's very suspicious. I'd go the latter.
Folks, I know, thanks for all who are joining, about 1,700. There's so much breaking news, but I got Lev and Zev, and Lev and Zev have done so much work on this, and we were trying our best in a short amount of time and without any prep for these two guys. They're doing a great job to consolidate it, right? Because what's common to them and to me is not common to everyone. But a narrative that keeps coming up is that they are very intertwined. Trump, Epstein, and Maxwell. This is not a one-off. This is not, we saw each other once in a while, at cocktail parties. Again, Michael Wolff, according to the audio that he has of Epstein, said that he was Donald Trump's closest friend, and they had falling out allegedly over two things: a property that Donald Trump bought from a Russian that then was bought from him again for a higher
funded,
price.
by the way, by Deutsche Bank. Who funded the original purchase for Donald Trump was Deutsche Bank. It was
40 million, right? So Donald Trump bids at 40 million, and then doesn't the original Russian owner buy it back from Donald Trump for 80 million?
96 million or something like that.
Isn't that money laundering? Isn't it like a little bit of money laundering?
Pure. Back in those days, it's pure.
Oh, through Deutsche Bank, by the way. I mean, it's the thing is, it's all like the players are all the same not surprisingly, because they're the same players doing the money laundering. That's why.
And I bet you it's the same wealth manager individual that was handling all of those transactions
Well,
for all of them.
one of the
I
guys
bet you did.
who's had the broker on that deal, I can't remember the name right now, but it's the famous broker that that Trump took to Russia in '96 with Leon Black. I can't remember his name, but he's the element broker, who's also part of the Russian, cabal of money. So it's all the
That
same people over and over
And
again.
it's all the same people. Leon Black, also in the book, also a person who sent Epstein a nice note, also a person in Wall Street who should have no business with Epstein, who's a college dropout, right?
Yeah.
Folks, real quick for those who don't know, Epstein, college dropout, somehow gets a cushy job at a private, teaching at this private school in New York. Who hires him? Bill Barr's father. Epstein, allegedly, while he was there teaching math, messing around with young girls. He gets, kicked out. But instead of being a nobody, he fails up. Fails up how? In Wall Street, right? Works with Bear Stearns, intersects with all these people like Leon Black, Leslie Wexner, billionaire CEO of Victoria's Secret, also very close to Israel, decides to give him his power of attorney and his $77 million townhouse for free, as one does. No one really understands how this man now all of a sudden is flush with billions of dollars. Where did he get his money? How is he able to get this townhouse for $77 million and this island, and this New Mexico ranch,
Ranch,
and
yeah.
this Paris house? And then Ghislaine Maxwell enters his life. He has the money, but he doesn't have the social connection. So Vicky Ward told me that Ghislaine Maxwell opened the doors to literally the billionaires, the famous people, the artists, right? Because Ghislaine Maxwell was the polished daughter of Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell also, they said, was part of Israeli intelligence. Where is Robert Maxwell buried? He's buried in the Mount of Olives in Israel. Robert Maxwell, who mysteriously died, right? And so then you got Maxwell with Epstein. That becomes the partnership that opens the doors to all these powerful people, this international sex trafficking ring, and all this money that we still know where he got from funds this international sex trafficking ring, which is why you should probably follow the money. And Ron Wyden, Democrat, thankfully, is doing the investigation.
That's
If
pretty
you
good.
follow the money, folks, we've given you some breadcrumbs. It would lead to the same players, the same two countries, it seems, Russia and Israel, the same bank, Deutsche Bank, it will at least give you some more answers to the question. But what we're trying to do right now, folks, because it's so overwhelming, we're trying to separate fact from fiction. We're trying to separate conspiracy theories from what we know. And I think this will be helpful for people. The two countries that keep coming up when it comes to connection to Trump and Epstein, and both of them together, is Russia and Israel. Right? Those are the two countries that keep coming together. So I leave it to you. Which country do you want to start with, Russia or Israel, Lev?
How about I'll give Zev Israel, I'll deal with Russia.
All right, Lev,
All
you do
right.
Russia.
So,
Go, Lev,
All right.
take Russia.
All right. Let's start off with this. First of all, everything you're seeing played out between Russia, Ukraine, Trump, even in the news right now, it's part of the theatrics. Even the fact that today you're hearing breaking news that Donald Trump all of a sudden sent 2 nuclear subs into the Russian region.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, oh my God, we're World War III. It's not happening, folks. Relax, take it easy. This is all part, this is his. Just think about it. This is Donald Trump's response to a drunken Medvedev, the ex-president who has no power, but he is overseen by Vladimir Putin because he can't just put out whatever he wants to put out. So the propaganda machine he puts out, Trump is an idiot. Trump says, well, if you call me an idiot, I'm going to put some nuclear subs into the Russian region. This is the things that they're talking about. The media is starting to jump over it. But again, this is theatrics. Behind the scenes, Donald Trump has been dealing with the Russians oligarchy since the fall, even prior to the fall of the Soviet Union. His ties go back, and his funding, his money, especially in the early 90s, I spoke about it, and just Zev mentioned it just now. He was the king funneling when it came to real estate of all of Putin, majority of Russian oligarchy and Putin money that was infueled into here. And it wasn't just Donald Trump. It was people like Len Blavatnik. It was people like Stephen Witkoff, who I talk about that you don't hear too much about right now, except for little bits and pieces. But just think about the simple fact that a guy like Stephen Witkoff, that has no diplomatic experience whatsoever, that is a real estate attorney, real estate billionaire, and he's met in the first 6 months with Vladimir Putin 4 times. He's been, I mean, that's not normal. You
No.
don't. You don't. People need to understand that. And the reason why I know is because he's already had very close ties to people like Dmitry Kirillov. Dmitry Kirillov is a wealth management fund. Again, we always talk about follow the money, who is very closely tied to Jared Kushner. It's the
Mm.
same names. They met, and who's involved? The Saudis. It happened in 2017 when Russian wealth fund manager Dmitry Kirillov, whose wife happens to be partners and best friends with Putin's daughter, just so you understand the relationship. And when Kushner was in Riyadh in the Saudis, the deal was made, and Witkoff was part of that. People don't know that Witkoff was a part of
Interesting.
the running around the Trump. That's when Blavatnik came in. That's when Whitno. I mean, there's so much we could talk about,
Yeah.
but they're all.
But also,
They're all.
Lev, real quick,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I don't want to cut you off,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
also want to
yeah,
remind
yeah,
people that
yeah.
MBS, the Mohammed bin Salman, the authoritarian leader of Saudi Arabia, bragged to people that he had Jared Kushner in his back pocket.
Mm.
Kushner meets with MBS, and then about a week later, MBS engages in the Red Wedding coup, if you all remember. The coup happened after Kushner left, and a lot of people say that means that Kushner gave the green light to MBS to do the coup. And then furthermore, if you all remember, the first foreign trip that Donald Trump took was to Saudi Arabia, where he's kneeling and Steve Bannon is dancing with swords, and everything is honky dory. And of course, one of the countries that gives Jared Kushner, for no apparent reason, all this money to start his new firm, it's Saudi Arabia. Just decides to give him an obscene amount of money. But continue.
Yeah, so Russia is. I want to make sure is just a distraction. He has given up on Ukraine. You could see even some of the text message. I mean, the Truth Social post he's putting out today. He's walking it back in 2 weeks. He'll put on some sanctions, some secondary sanctions, which will mean nothing absolutely because the one thing people don't realize is he destroyed the agencies that are meant to oversee sanctions. So just think about that. Trump came in, he destroyed all these agencies that oversee sanctions in
Yeah.
Russia, oversee these shadow fleets that oil goes around Venezuela. Doge came in, crushed it all. So we don't have that. So now Trump is putting on the sanctions on countries, but there's nobody to oversee it. There's nobody to implement it. So these are just press releases to do because at the end of the day, there's ways of Donald Trump. If he really was hard on Russia, he would support. Just think about this, guys. And I know I keep going back, but he's made so many announcements. Remember how the media was, oh my God, Donald Trump is going after. He's going to supply Ukraine with all these weapons. Where are the weapons?
The weapons are not there.
Where are the weapons? I said.
Yeah.
I mean, the weapons are instead. He confused the shit out of the whole world by having NATO give up their stuff, and it's basically follow Waldo. Where's Waldo? Meanwhile, Ukrainians are dying every day. Russia's attacking every day. Now he's going to come out and put on these secondary. First of all, tariffs. Think about it. We have no trade with Russia. What tariffs are you going to put on Russia? Today it's not even funny, but he's going to try. You're going to tell me I could bet anybody anything that he's not going to sanction China over buying oil from Russia.
And
Ain't going to happen.
he's going to try sanction India, I think is the game plan. But
Yeah,
we'll see if that works.
I mean,
But look, for many people, I appreciate you all connecting the dots, and I'm going to go to Zev for Israel and see how that connects to both Maxwell and Trump. But for many people watching, I realize that this seems like a conspiracy theory. We're not conspiracy theorists. I'm not. I try to separate fact from fiction, and I realize it's so overwhelming, right? But you also then have to think about it. Why would Donald Trump lie to the American public if he was told by his Attorney General Pam Bondi that he's in the files? Why, folks, with Ghislaine Maxwell, as Lev said, for no apparent reason, be moved from Florida, where she's serving a 20-year sentence, to this minimum security camp in Texas? Donald Trump, twice this week, was asked if he would pardon Maxwell. And what he should have said was, of course not. Why would I pardon this woman who's a supervillain who was complicit with Epstein? You all hear what he said, folks? He goes, I heard I can do it. I haven't ruled it out. But he should have just said no, but he hasn't. He hasn't. That's a tell. And the other people are like, well, why is it that Ehud Barak, who was the former prime minister of Israel, the former head of the IDF, visited and met with Epstein so many times? Why is it that Leslie Wexner, the CEO of Victoria's Secret, very close to Israel, gave Epstein a power of attorney? Why is it that Alex Acosta, who gave Epstein the sweetheart deal, which Zev, I'll ask you about that again, because I don't think it'll just piss people off, and it should, because the sweetheart deal, because not enough people know
I think
the
he
sweetheart
froze.
deal.
Zev, are you there?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah,
the sweetheart deal. We see 11 and Zev. The
Okay.
sweetheart deal that he gave Alex Acosta when he was U.S. attorney in 2008. Alex Acosta then became, folks, the labor secretary of Trump. And the Wall Street Journal reported that when asked why Alex Acosta gave this pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, an unheard of sweetheart deal to a known pedophile, he apparently said, "Oh, because he was intelligence." And this is where I want to go to you, Zev, and speak about intelligence and speaking about other countries and Israel. Let's start off with Robert Maxwell and then connect the dots.
Okay, Robert Maxwell's interesting. He worked for like 3 or 4 intelligence agencies, depending on who you believe. And he made each one believe that he was solely responsible for them, and so he was a double, triple agent in some cases. So he certainly has ties to MI6, although it's unclear whether they were his primary ties. His primary ties were probably with Mossad, which was where you rightly pointed out he was buried on the Mount of Zion, or Mount of Olives, sorry. But he also had ties to the KGB, and these ties to the KGB were directly with this guy named Cherbikov, who was eventually the head of the KGB, but originally just the foreign office guy of the KGB. And they were very close. This is the time of Gorbachev's passing. It was also very close to, the Soviet Union ending and Gorbachev stepping down. And Gorbachev and Maxwell were very close to each other. So you take all that into the mix of saying, okay, there's Robert Maxwell, who's an agent for the KGB, friends with Gorbachev, and also works as an agent for Israel. And that's
currently buried in the Mount of Olives.
Yeah. It's really interesting that this is all happening. And in 1987, just to add on to some of the stuff that Lev said, Donald Trump visited Russia. He went to St. Petersburg and he went to Moscow. He did another thing that year. He visited with Robert Maxwell on his yacht in New York. We had a big yacht party, I guess, with John Tower amongst other people were there. And so, that's not. You could say it's coincidence, but it's kind of strange that he visits St. Petersburg, he visits Moscow, and then he also visits with Robert Maxwell, a KGB agent of the same year. So that's the Robert Maxwell story. But certainly his operations were financed through Israel. He did the Iran-Contra deal with Israel. He was reporting to Israel during the Iran-Contra deal. So, he was
a fraudster who later we realized made millions of his money through like these schemes, and then mysteriously died. They found him off his yacht, drowned.
Yeah, and look, the schemes is what actually Epstein did as well. I mean, the thing is that people haven't yet clocked into is that those schemes continued in the United States. That he learned about the schemes under Maxwell in the 1980s. Epstein basically studied under Maxwell in London when they were doing the Iran-Contra arms deals. Now, Epstein himself wasn't involved in the arms deals for that particular deal, but he was involved in the Al Yamana deals and involved with Adnan Khashoggi at the time. So, but at that time, Epstein used to go to Robert Maxwell's office all the time. He was Ghislaine's boyfriend. They started their romance or so-called romance together. And Robert Maxwell thought this was going to be his future son-in-law, and groomed him in many of the ways of Robert Maxwell's empire building, which was always involved a lot of bankruptcies, a lot of shady businesses, a lot of mergers, a lot of unusual activity on the business front. And that's how he made a lot of money. But of course, he died broke, having stolen several $1 million from the Murrah pension fund. So, where did that money go at the end of his life? Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
People say it went to. Some people say it maybe went to Epstein.
It went to Epstein. I know it went to Epstein. I just haven't reported it yet because the reality of it is that's what Epstein was doing. And I've a source who told me that in the dying days in the days when Maxwell was really realizing his days were numbered at the end there, and his financials were under pressure, as he was also blackmailing Mossad because he was threatening to release all the secrets of Mossad unless they gave him $400 million. Well, apparently Jeffrey Epstein was involved in that planning, in that financial planning in the final days. And he was also a person of interest, I'm told, in the murder of Maxwell. That never went anywhere, but according to the FBI reports that someone I know saw, said that Maxwell Epstein was a person of interest. It's a lot. It's a lot of stuff, but it's
No, but I'm so glad you mentioned that because people don't know. And also with Epstein, folks, people forget that he was associates with Stephen Hoffenberg. And Stephen Hoffenberg went to jail, I think, for 18 years for, at that time, executing the largest Ponzi scheme in history at that time. Jeffrey Epstein's mentor was Stephen Hoffenberg. Stephen Hoffenberg, after he was released from prison, said Jeffrey Epstein was completely complicit in this Ponzi scheme, but flipped on him and never went to jail. And so Jeffrey Epstein was with these people, gets all this money. Maxwell dies. After Maxwell dies, he gets this money. We don't know how. Ghislaine then teams up with him, right? And then explain to us why, oh, why the former prime minister of Israel would just meet Jeffrey Epstein several times in the United States of America.
Well, Ari Ben Menashe, who used to work for the Israelis and didn't after he wrote his book, his expose about what the Israelis were doing around the world, he told me that Ehud Barak was there as part of the operation, part of the blackmail operation that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were doing, and that Ehud Barak was there to get intelligence, basically. And the thing that's interesting to me is, as you point out, Ehud Barak was the defense minister in Israel for a period of time, and I haven't completely correlated these. So I'm not sure which times. I'm not sure exactly the dates that he was there and all that. So maybe I'm off a little bit here. But of course, Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell worked for Israeli military intelligence, which put them under the defense ministry in Israel because that was part of the IDF, not part of Mossad, which was a different group. And so that would be the reason he'd go there as the defense secretary, as the head of the IDF. He'd go there to get intelligence from his intelligence officers. I mean, that's when you think about it that way, it makes a lot of sense. This guy was collecting, secrets.
And also, Lev, the intersection of it then again is Alex Acosta was the U.S. attorney who gives Epstein a sweetheart deal in 2008 that allows him to essentially stay out of prison for 6 of the 7 days and self-report, which means he gets to commit all these crimes. Alex Acosta then becomes labor secretary for Trump. Alex Acosta allegedly says it's that Epstein was intelligence, which is why he was told to be hands off. But then you see, again, you keep mentioning this, Lev, so I'm going to bring it back to your quote. It's the same players, the same countries. And the reason why I don't think it's a conspiracy at all is if I'm intelligence, of any intelligence country, right? And I know there's a man who cavorts with some of the most powerful, wealthy people on earth, potentially future presidents of the United States of America. If I'm an intelligence agency of a foreign country, I want to make sure I'm in good with that person and use him because now I have blackmail. I have blackmail on some of the most powerful people on earth. Maybe even I have blackmail on people like, I don't know, Donald Trump. Lev, your take.
Well, see, the biggest thing I want everybody to understand is, yes, for normal individuals, for normal people listening to these stories and hearing this, it sounds off the wall. It sounds like we're watching a movie, and some of them, and I'm glad Wash says we're not here to talk conspiracy theories. We're talking about facts. But I could tell you, for somebody that lived that life for 4 years in the Trump administration and traveled all over the world and dealt with all different type of intelligence agents, from Russian to Ukrainian to British to from Vienna, Czech. I mean, you name it, including our own intelligence, CIA and FBI, that were pro what we were doing and everything. I could tell you that this is nothing surprising, that a guy like Maxwell or, with all of these, the one thing I want to say, and I keep saying it, and I want to bring it back to, because sometimes we're so jaded because we want some kind of smoking gun, like actually somebody coming out and saying it. But guys, if we turn around right now and we're going to hear thunder in the background and we're going to hear lightning, and I turn around and all of a sudden it's wet, we could say it rained outside. I mean, it's common sense. So all of these things that we're talking about, from Maxwell's interactions with Donald Trump, that are, forget about what we don't know. Let's talk about what we know. We know for a fact that Donald Trump had a very close relationship with Epstein. It's a fact. You could debate how long, if it's 10 years, 15 years, when they got into an argument. It doesn't matter. They had a close relationship long enough and through a period of time where Epstein was committing these crimes. Another fact, Donald Trump and Maxwell have a relationship even dating back closer before Donald Trump, when Maxwell used to work for her father for the Daily News, when he used to own the Daily News, when Maxwell owned, and she was intertwining in those Trump circles back in those days. So those are facts that Trump intertwined with these people. It is also fact that Donald Trump is what's the right word? Because I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if convicted or I mean,
Held
he's
liable for sexual assault again, held liable for has been held liable for sexual assault and
against.
defamation against E. Jean Carroll.
Thank you so much, Wash, because we gotta be careful. Otherwise, he's gonna come after us one or the other. So, I mean, but he is liable sexual assault. We heard for his own words the same things that are so disgusting. We're not gonna repeat them, from the way he talks about his daughter, to the way he talks about, other women, that people try to say it's locker room talk, to the factual thing that he doesn't talk about the victims. He tries always to protect himself, protect other people, distract, go out, never talk about the victims. Never talk about, very good for you. I mean, except for talk about that she was stolen, like a piece of object.
Mm.
This is who Donald Trump is. So really, for those people, they want more evidence, more facts that Donald Trump is somehow involved in this. You know what? I don't know. You're going to be waiting. Nothing will appease you. These are facts. The fact that the Russians were involved, that's also a fact. All of the stuff Zev is bringing you, follow the money, the relationship, the dollars. We could sit here, and if we told you the names of the individuals, and some of the shows that we've done, I have spoken about the actual individuals that have given money to Witkoff and to Trump, like a guy named Golubchik.
Mm.
Golubchik was a part of a very major Russian organized crime ring. It's not me saying it, the FBI said it. And this is a gentleman that Stephen Witkoff signed on behalf of when he was buying an apartment in Manhattan. He signed a letter saying that Golubchik is a good man and he should go and get this apartment. When Golubchik was indicted and the FBI and they came to Stephen Witkoff and said, "Why did you write that letter?" Stephen Witkoff said, "You know what? I really don't know the guy. I did it on behalf of my friend." Who is his friend? Dealing with these guys. This is the same people that had, going back to Molly's Game, the movie, the Molly's Game,
Yeah.
the illegal poker games that were being done. It was being done in Trump Tower. These are the same people. The leader of this organization was a gentleman by the name of Taiwanchik, who I know very well. I've through my years in Russia. This is the guy. I'm giving you some history
Mhm.
that fixed the Olympics. The world. Remember the skating when the Canadians
Yeah.
won the gold, and it was taken away because to given to the Russians, and then it was realized that it was a fix. It was in. That's the guy that fixed it. He's like number 2, 3, close to Putin. I mean, so this is the people that are. These are all factual.
Yeah.
The money laundering, the buying of the properties, Deutsche Bank. I mean, these are the things that we need to know. Is who he else is covering up for him. That's why we need to put pressure, release all the files, because they're, like you said, Waj, which is extremely important. Except for Maxwell, there's no person that paid the price, that has been indicted, has been punished, has been done for thousands of victims. And we need that on behalf of the victims. We need to be their voices. And that's why each and every year, we have a little over 2,000 people now.
Mm.
You need to be that megaphone. You need to be that extension of our voices, of their voices, of each and every victim out there that, Donald Trump right now is trying to rewrite history, rewrite the story of Epstein, rewrite the story of Maxwell, rewrite the story of all the victims. So that's why it's extremely important that we stop trying to find that smoking gun. We can have enough common sense. We just need to start putting the information and keeping to the facts. Because the scary part, and that's why I tell everybody, when you try to chase that smoking gun, sometimes
Mm.
you'll chase into a rabbit hole, which will blow up everything. And that's what Donald Trump tries
Well,
to
I
do.
want to ask you all two follow-up questions because I appreciate, again, I've always tried in all these conversations. I've talked to Lev about this a couple times. Zev and I just met, and we had this conversation with people who really liked Vicky Ward. I've talked to twice. I've talked to Leland Nally, who did a great job. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I know there's a lot of bullshit out there. I know there's a lot of dangerous bullshit that has radicalized people. So what we're trying to give you is facts, the timeline, what we know, what's an allegation. We say it's an allegation, right? But there's enough out there, Lev. And again, folks, another piece of smoking gun evidence. I want to go back to it. And I want to ask you all this question. And I want to ask you one more after that. And I appreciate your time. There's about 2,300 people watching. For those who have joined us late, I'm talking to Lev Parnas and Zev Shalev. Zev has done, he's been following the money trail in Epstein for nearly 15 years. Lev was one of Donald Trump's fixers. He knows a lot of the players within the Trump orbit and the Russian orbit. And with his sources, Lev called it. He goes, oh, wait, you'll see. Just watch. Ghislaine will be transferred. And one of the smoking guns is today, Ghislaine Maxwell has been moved for no reason whatsoever to a minimum security prison camp. And so the question I have for both of you, what does Ghislaine have over Donald? What is he so afraid of?
Everything. I mean, she is the daughter of Robert Maxwell. She was very involved in Robert Maxwell's work. She knew a lot about Robert Maxwell. In fact, when he died, she was the one sort of hiding the files and removing all the files and doing all the the secret stuff that needed to happen because of his intelligence background and his business background. And so if you connect that to that kind of experience and that kind of knowledge that she has, that, it was passed down from her father, how to be an international super spy, basically. And you add that to Epstein. And, some people say she was more powerful than Epstein. She really ran the shop. He might have done a lot of the actual operational stuff, but it was her who guided everything. And that would make sense, especially because of her history with Robert. But the thing that I keep pointing to is that it's not just the girls. It's not the girls and it's not the blackmail that they've got. It's the decades and decades of organized criminal activity that both Epstein and Trump were involved in. And that connection, all the wealth, all the money that has been amassed by these people for their networks around the world, that is what she has. So if she wanted to, she could take down Donald Trump because it is billions and billions and billions of dollars of money stolen from the American taxpayer. So this is what Donald Trump is running from. The last thing he wants, and I'm sure this is in the FBI files, because this is the kind of stuff the FBI does. It does counterintelligence. So they'd be sitting around investigating why Donald Trump was doing these deals and why Jeffrey Epstein was doing these deals. That is what's in the files, and that's why the files are probably never going to come out. And Ghislaine Maxwell can either cover up for Donald Trump and all this, or she could reveal everything about Donald Trump. So she's in an interestingly powerful position, but she's also very vulnerable.
Very vulnerable. She's the woman who knows it all. I agree with what, Lev and I talked about this last week. We were predicting it, and Lev, you mentioned it, that if I was Ghislaine, what I would say, if I was Donald, what I would do is the quid pro quo. Because, folks, it's happening. They're literally not covering up anything. It's happening. This is a quid pro quo. It's happening right in front of you. I would say Donald Trump and Epstein were just friends. I never saw Donald Trump do anything, but you know who I did see? Bill Clinton and Bill Gates and Larry Summers. I'll give 2-3 other names as chum to placate the base. And voila, Ghislaine will, get commuted or in the, witness security program or voila. You're seeing it happening already.
Yeah.
The first part of that, when Lev and I talked last week, already happened when Todd Blanche met with Ghislaine. The second part is literally today, where for no reason whatsoever, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was completely complicit in this heinous abuse of girls, folks, for decades, has been moved to a minimum security prison camp. And the third one is going to be some type of commutation and distraction where she's going to name Clinton or Bill Richardson, all these other people, and make Donald Trump look good. However, Lev, I want to ask you this, and you and I talked about this. I believe 89% of Americans, as of last week, have been following this case. He is negative double digits on Epstein. People do not trust him. The majority of Americans want the release of the files. This is making him even look more guilty. I agree with Zev that he will never release the files. We're just calling them the files, evidence, documents, call it what you will. Because clearly, as we know from Wall Street Journal reporting, he is in the files. And as of today's reporting from Bloomberg, his name has been redacted. That FBI division that Allison talked about, they were told to go and find Donald Trump's names in these thousands of documents and circle it. And now we know that they're redacting it, right? So enough people know that he's hiding something. My take on this, Lev, is if he does this, which he will, I think we should be prepared that Glenn is going to come out with some sweetheart deal, which is so infuriating. I don't think it's enough for his base. I think it will cause more questions than answers. Your take, Lev, and what you're hearing.
Well, it's going to be an interesting. Well, what I'm hearing and what interesting is how the Democrat hierarchy react, because this is all also he's playing, trying to set them up into a position because, everybody, they're screaming, release the files, release the files. Remember, they could have also released the files during the 4 years when Biden was and Merrick Garland was in charge. So because the reason those files that we talk about are not released is because there's people implicated on both sides. And that's why we as the people are demanding that the files be released. It doesn't matter. And we demand that it doesn't matter who's on that list, that those people be prosecuted. But the dangerous part is what I'm hearing is what's part of Trump's strategy to do, because remember, we still have a long time, over a year until the midterm election. And this has been going on in the news cycle for a long time. And the plan that I'm hearing that's being formulated is he's going to come out, he's going to name some big names of when it comes to the Democrats, big enough where it's going to stir up a shit show. He's going to throw some chum in there into the Republicans. And here's where the interesting part. He's betting on that the Democratic hierarchy, like the Schumers and everybody else, are going to come out defending, saying that it's a cover-up, and not going after trying to get to the bottom, saying, okay, these four are on here, who else? We want everybody. Let's get to the bottom. If they are, let's see the facts. Let's go to, if they don't react that way and they try to cover it up, he will get his base back together quicker than you could say like this, because it will just prove what he's saying is they're coming after me, because he'll throw them also some chum. This is what I'm hearing. This is what the plan. It doesn't mean it's going to come out and work out in this way, but this is what you will see play out in the next several days, week coming ahead, with him coming out giving names. And then it's going to be very major on how the reaction of the media and the Democratic Party.
And my fear is it might work. And the reason why I tell you all that is I've brought this up several times. I try to keep the receipts, and I've reminded all of you of this interview that Nancy Pelosi did just like a week and a half ago, where she was on MSNBC and she told Chris Jansen, the Epstein files are just a distraction. We should get to bread and butter issues. And this was while, folks, everyone was talking about the same story we're talking about, Epstein. And people are like, oh my God, this seems to be the one kryptonite spear that has pierced Teflon Don. And Nancy Pelosi comes out on MSNBC and said, this is distraction, bread and butter issues. And my fear was at that time, and of course I have no proof, but I'm like, if Bill Clinton is all over and there's other Democrats, which I'm sure there are, she might be trying to run cover and protection. And if indeed, Ghislaine, and I'm guarantee you she gave them Democratic names, and
100%.
donor name. If they come out and they focus just on these names, these Democrats, who, folks, the establishment Democrats are just. We could have had AOC on the head of oversight. They gave it to Jerry Connolly. You know where Jerry Connolly is now, folks? He's dead. You know who rallied votes for Jerry Connolly from her hospital bed? Nancy Pelosi. So my fear, Zev and Lev, is that in order to save and protect the elders of the Democratic Party, they might actually be complicit with Trump in this cover-up. And I think I've talked to both of you. You were all on the same page. We don't care whose name is this. If it's a Democrat, a liberal, a libertarian, a MAGA, a Republican, an American, a celebrity, a philanthropist, if it's proven that these people were complicit in preying on girls, F them all. Name them all. And I think this will be a test for Democrats. Are you willing to throw some of your titans under the bus for accountability and justice? I would say yes. I don't have faith in them, and I think that's what Donald Trump is banking on, is that the Schumers and the Pelosi's, in order to protect the alleged, Clintons and Gates and Richardsons, will play ball and talk about the big beautiful bill, measles, trade wars. But this is a story that no one's letting go. The last story I want to ask about, Zev, because it's another breaking piece of news. And again, sounds conspiratorial. But folks, CBS reported it, Wired reported it, and now there's a story yesterday that came out on Daily Beast. The video. There's the video that apparently Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi have seen that confirms, according to them, that Epstein killed himself by suicide. However, what they said that there is a missing minute. CBS just this week said that they have a government source that says that these individuals have a copy of the unedited video. Furthermore, Wired says it's not just a minute missing, there's 2 minutes and 50 seconds missing. And then furthermore, yesterday, Daily Beast came out that said there's a mysterious third person or a third body in the video. Now you sit there, Zev, and you go, I am not a conspiracy theorist. But then you see all of this and you're like, yo, what are you hiding? Zev.
Well, I mean, there's so much being hidden on that day. The fact that they've now discovered this video anyhow has been so surprising. You know, why it took them so long? They finally just discovered it now. And then you start analyzing that video, and you know, CBS has done a good job here, and Wired has done a good job, not only about the missing minutes and then that ridiculous story that Bondi spun about it being just 1 minute. You know, that it was every day at 1 minute, you know, at midnight, when it was not. It was 2.5 minutes. But then there's this third person who's mysteriously there with the two guards that had been previously named in that lawsuit. So, look, you've got. I mean, I remember the day he died. I told you the story last time. I called Hoffenberg right away because I just wanted to get his reaction. It was 8:00 in the morning, and it's just hours after he died. And I said, you know, and Steve was freaked out when he found out that Epstein had
Can you
died.
remind people who Steve Hoffenberg is?
Steve
We talked about him
Hoffenberg
briefly.
was Epstein's partner and mentor. He went to jail for 18 years for Epstein's crimes. He was with him for 9 years. He's probably about the closest witness that we've had who knew him, you know, for the long period of time, and was able to give us a lot of information about about Epstein's thinking. Now, you know, when I told Hoffenberg that Epstein had died that morning, he was so nervous. He was so scared. He was in hospital in New England, and he immediately got the doctors in, the nurses in. He was like, no one touched me today. I don't want to have this procedure today. No one is injecting anything into me. I don't want any drips. I don't want everything taken out of here. And he wouldn't let me off the phone for an hour. He was terrified. What was he terrified of? Is that he was going to get killed next. And he's concerned that he thought, and he asked him who, and he said Trump was the reason. That's what he said. So, you know, does this mean that he believed that Epstein was killed? Yes, he believed that Epstein was killed. And we went through this with a forensic guy from what's his name? Can't remember his name. Sorry, I'm blanking out on names lately. Who was brought in by the brother? Who was brought in by Epstein's brother to do a postmortem on his death. And there's no ways he could have died. Like, you know, the way the story was, this are 2 bunk beds, and somehow he hung himself off 2 bunk beds. This is a 6-foot guy who's hanging himself off bunk beds. I mean, it's just not.
Three broken bones in his neck.
Yeah.
3 broken bones in his neck.
How did that happen? And then, you know, he was subject to an assault a week or so before that by his roommate in prison, you know, who was also this thug who's with weird ties.
24/7 surveillance on suicide watch.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah, I mean, it's so unlikely that this guy, and he was singing, you know, he was telling prosecutors what they wanted to know. Because I know at the time, Hoffenberg told me he was trying to also move to a better facility. You know, he was trying to get better digs. And one of the things he was doing was giving names to the prosecutors. So, you know, he was not in the mood to kill himself, or he would have done that before. He was in the mood of cooperating.
And Lev, I'll go to you in one second, but I just want to remind people that Michael Wolff also said that Jeffrey Epstein was worried about Donald Trump. And probably in Jeffrey Epstein, according to Michael Wolff, Jeffrey Epstein sang to Michael Wolff. He has audio tapes. Yeah. And then he said that once Donald Trump was elected, the first presidency, he was worried. He was worried that the Trump administration would go after him. And folks, again, look what happened. It was not under the Biden administration that Epstein died. It was under the Trump administration. Lev.
I mean, guys, both of you, very great points. I'm going to give you guys a little story about something I've never spoken about before, but it pertains to this and it's important. So, first of all, I usually try not to give you my opinion. I try to stay to facts. But my opinion is Epstein was killed. He didn't kill himself. And I'll give you why I'm decided to give you my opinion, because I have so much factual stuff to back that up to make me believe it, because I haven't seen him actually kill himself. But first of all, I was in prison. I stayed in several prisons, some of the most secure facilities where it's called the SHU, where it's called maximum, where the protection is just like MDC is. So I know exactly the cell. I didn't stay in Epstein's cell, but I stayed in exactly the same type of cell for several months in different facilities, and I could tell you, there's no way you could kill yourself. It's almost impossible because first of all, there's no such thing as the camera not working. It doesn't matter because every 15 minutes, they're walking by with flashlights. They bang on the door. They make sure there's a certain protocol when you're in that division. It's not like a regular jail. They want you to believe where you're just sleeping, the lights are off, and then they wake up in the morning, lights are on, the doors open up. No, when you're in the SHU, segregated housing unit, or in protective custody, there's a certain protocol where they're monitoring you for specifically for you not to commit suicide, for you not to do something, for you not to get killed, because that's the reason you are there. So there's a major protocol that day. For some reason, all of it went out the window. The protocol, the people fell asleep, the guards, the cameras weren't working. That's all bullshit. Start off with that.
Yeah.
How I know it's bullshit because when I was in Otisville prison, I served time with an individual. I'm not going to give you his last name. His name was Marcus. He was a Dominican Republican gentleman. He was serving a 12-year sentence for drugs. And he was an orderly in Otisville because he was there for a long time. Me and him got to be close because he knew that I was part of the whole Trump, Giuliani, that whole thing. Eventually, he took me aside after like 2-3 months into it. And he goes to me, I want to tell you a story. And he told me a story that he was there in MDC while Maxwell was there, and he was part of the cleanup. He would wipe the floors on on the SHU on the 10th floor where Maxwell was being held, and basically he met it with him, and he said that. So the other thing, before we even go to that, I want you to understand the process of being Maxwell when he committed suicide or got killed, whatever. He was just in the process, the first stage. He was just indicted. He did not even go in front of the court. He was just in the process of getting bail. Nobody at that point with his money, with his connection, whatever, would ever try to kill himself because you're in the first stages. He would have probably gotten out on bail with his money, with his power, with his connections. If it was
You
a
mean
normal, Epstein, correct. Yeah. So even the framing, the timing, it's not like it's one thing if he was found guilty after trial. Now he's looking at life in prison or something like that. That's when you usually go on suicide watch, not when you just get arrested, literally, and you're meeting with your lawyers. I was told also by Marcus that he was in a good mood even sometimes when he would walk by, and so he wasn't in one of those moods where constantly crying. He was talking about that he was set up because of his money. He was able to have his lawyers come there every day to see his lawyers, to go out, because that's part of the way you could get out of your cell and you go meet with your lawyers and do it. So there was no reason. And then there's another tale. So if you saw the pictures, there was lots of orange bed sheets or whatever you want to call them in there. That's the first thing I could tell you why I know it's bullshit, because you're not allowed to have all of that in segregation. You're only allowed a certain amount of certain things to be able. You can't have just like I had one.
And also to coincide, I didn't mean to cut you off. There's a mysterious orange shape in the video. That's right. What everyone's saying is like, who's this person with orange? Continue.
And then to finalize it, he told me that right after that happened, because he was cleaning the cell after Epstein. When they took him out, he was the orderly that was cleaning it. He said that that day they brought in McDonald's. Literally from outside, they shut him up. They brought a McDonald's for a lot of the people on in the ward. I don't know exactly who and how. Like to keep people shut up, quiet of what was going on, of all the hoopla. And the number one thing, the other thing, it happened under Bill Barr's watch. And where's Bill Barr? Bill Barr's quiet. Bill Barr's hiding. Bill Barr's not talking. But it happened under Bill Barr's watch.
Didn't Bill Barr meet him in prison?
I mean, that was the rumor, and I've seen I've seen him sign in. I've seen a name that was not his name, but it's a name that he used in other places. I've seen that signature on a signing form for the week before, but I've never seen it again. So I don't know if that was just buried. It's one of those things that just disappeared. But the rumor is that Bill Barr went in to see Jeffrey Epstein in the days before he died. Now, what for? Maybe they're just because they were old friends. They would have intersected when he worked for his father. I mean, but they were also in intelligence together because Bill Barr was part of the CIA.
And also, I'll tell you, just so give you some of the tactics that Bill Barr used, but a lot of people don't know. Like even with my arrest, Bill Barr, the day of my arrest, went and flew to the Southern District of New York, which he's never done, never been there yet, as a sitting Attorney General, and overseen my arrest.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, it's actually you could dig it. There was a report somebody wrote
Wow.
that I'll find. I was like, not only, but it gets interesting even more. He congratulated the Southern District team with the arrest. And then right after that, it was reported by the media, I'll get it for you, but nobody spoke about it. He went to dinner with Rupert Murdoch. Why? Because part of my objective while I was going to Vienna was to do an interview with Sean Hannity and Fox. And the day before my arrest, we had the meetings with Rudy Giuliani and Victoria Tunzi in Fox headquarters in Washington, D.C. with John Solomon at 10 o'clock at night in the headroom of Fox Corp. So he then met with Rupert. So this is the type of stuff Bill Barr did even in my arrest. So I wouldn't put it past him doing a lot of things. And that's what I'm saying. Where is Bill Barr? Why is Bill Barr? Listen, right now we're talking the biggest thing happening. Bill Barr was in charge when Epstein was arrested. Bill Barr knows where the body's buried. Why isn't Bill Barr talking?
Bill Barr's not talking. Alex Acosta's not talking. Leslie Wexner is still alive.
Thank
the
you.
man who
Thank
just
you.
gave Epstein the power of attorney, right? And
Yep.
the only person who's in prison is a woman who deserves to be in prison, Ghislaine Maxwell, who, as of today, folks, for no reason whatsoever, was moved to a minimum security prison in Texas. I've kept you both much longer than I thought I would. We could keep going. It was fantastic. There's about 2,700 people watching. I've been talking to Zev and Lev for about 70 minutes now. We will have this conversation up on all of our Substacks with the transcript. I strongly recommend people listen. Zev has spent, more than 10 years following the money trail, has talked to the individuals. We talked today about, the money trail, Russia, Israel, people like Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, the same players that keep coming up again and again and again. And we tried our best, folks, to differentiate fact from rumor, fact from fiction, because it could be overwhelming. It could be so overwhelming. And when you hear these things, you're like, this is the type of stuff we see in movies, conspiracies. But we've had conspiracies. Lev is literally sitting in Watergate. This is nothing new. Rich and powerful people always try to cover up their crimes. My Lai massacre, Abu Ghraib, Donald Trump's entire existence, the violent insurrection of January 6th. And again, you should be asking the questions, the evidence that's literally right in front of your face. Just look at the evidence in front of your face. Todd Blanche was sent to talk to Ghislaine Maxwell. 2 days, shroud of secrecy. While that's happening, Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys openly tweeting to the world, asking for a pardon, commutation, appealing to Supreme Court, appealing to Donald Trump. And as of today, Ghislaine Maxwell, for no reason whatsoever, breaking news, serving a 20-year prison sentence in Florida, moved to a minimum security prison camp for women in Texas. So what's going to happen next? Why is Donald Trump lying? Why is there a cover-up? Why did Pam Bondi tell him he was in the files in May? Why did he tell us he wasn't in the files? What is it about Virginia Giuffre when he said Epstein stole her from him? What did that mean? How come he was still friends with him? How come he gave him that note? What did he know? What did he not know? Who else was involved, right? This missing video, why is there a minute missing? And how did CBS News just say there's a government source that's saying actually they have the full video? What's in the full video? How come this evidence isn't being released, folks? What's going to happen next? And what Zev, Lev, and myself have predicted, it doesn't take a genius, is what's going to happen is a cover-up where Ghislaine Maxwell is going to talk like a bird, and she's going to give them liberal names and some chum, and Donald Trump will be exonerated. No, he won't. And she will be commuted or disappeared and live safely. And will that be enough to make this distraction go away? Time will tell. Lev and Zev, fantastic work, folks. I just, there's no outline, folks. There's no prep. Zev's busy, Lev's busy, so we just pressed play on both, and we tried to do our best. It was our first time together, but I think it worked out well. Zev, shamelessly promote yourself. How can people follow you? How can people support you?
I want to shamelessly promote Lev because he won a major award yesterday. It was
Oh,
given a
thank
major award called the Pillar Award for
thank you,
being
brother.
a whistleblower and being
Oh,
one
that's
of the
great.
best.
That's
It's
great.
amazing. Lev, just can you talk a little bit about it? Because it's so cool that you went
Thank,
and did
oh,
that.
thank you guys. Thank you so much. I'm humbled. I mean, that's why I'm in Washington to begin with. I was actually, I got an email about a month ago saying that I'm going to be honored, and I received the 13th annual Whistleblower Award alongside other great whistleblowers out there. And it was incredible. It was at the Washington D.C. press conference, not press conference, press room, where all the
Yeah,
media
yeah, it's great, great place.
gets together. Incredible place, and it was so surreal to me, and it was so incredible. I had my son Aaron with me at the time, and watching the 13th floors. We were on the top floor, and the 13th floors that were typically watching the history were filled with press, media out there running. It was empty. It was empty, and then standing there and watching. We're in a time where whistleblowers, truth tellers, independent journalists are targets. They're targets by the administration. They're targets by Donald Trump. They're targets by the Pam Bondi and people that are trying to shut up our freedom of speech, our right to talk. Our First Amendment rights to go out there to protest, to be able to say what we want, and it's working because you see what he's doing with the CBS, with ABC, with you see the way
Everyone.
everyone, CNN, MSNBC, they've all folded. I mean, everybody except for independent journalists. And I'll tell you honestly, the most proudest moment for me yesterday was standing there when I was accepting the award to look at my son and seeing that he was leading that independent journalism right now, and watching him under the pressure that he is from the Trump campaign, from the administration. I was just a proud dad yesterday, not only to receive the award, not even imagine, because you got to understand, guys, I come from Brooklyn, New York. I come from a place in the streets where whistleblowing is a no-no. Telling is a no-no. It's considered, in the way Donald Trump would say, I'm a rat.
Mm.
That's how Donald Trump would talk about it, and that's what whistleblowers. And the one thing I could tell you is that I learned over the past several years that it's a total opposite. Being a whistleblower is something that there's no celebrity in it. There's no, great. It's the opposite. Your family goes through craziness. You have to go through pain and everything. You have to be able to, and for all the whistleblowers out there, especially right now, the sources, the people out there that are trying to get us the information that we're getting to you and talking about and coming out under such pressure. It was really humbling and incredible. So thanks
No,
for mentioning.
Congrats. That's amazing.
it's great. It's great, and also just a great. I do believe. I'll quickly say this: people need an off ramp, and what I mean by that is there will be a lot of people in the MAGA world, Trump supporters, Trump voters, who will realize, I hope sooner than later, that they got played, that they got had, that they fell into this myth, this romantic story, this narrative. I understand people's rage and anger. Trust me, I get it. But you need to give people an off ramp for redemption. You need to give people an off ramp to earn a path towards redemption. You need people an off ramp for a better story and another story. And I think that's why Lev's story is important, because Lev was part and parcel of it. I never thought 10 years ago I would ever be speaking to Lev Parnas. I'm like, that piece of shit, Lev Parnas, that
Yeah.
friggin' Trump fixer, this guy, this mother effer, F him to the ends
Zev
of the earth.
also,
That's
Zev also,
Yeah.
Zev was after me.
I
Zev was
investigated Lev for a long time. I was like, I had the goods on him. Yeah. And I was like, that
but
guy. But he
Lev
turned
went to
around.
jail. Lev went to
Yeah.
jail. Uh, and Lev came out of jail, and he spent his time, and his son has done fantastic work. And so I think you need to give people an off ramp as well to earn a path towards that redemption. So Lev, I appreciate your character arc, as they say, the character arc in the story. And then also follow Lev Remembers and his son Aaron Parnas. Zev does fantastic work for narrative. I'll promote Zev.
Zev.
Zev's
Yeah.
Yeah.
been on the pace on this case for a while. Zev was formerly of CBS. We'll talk about CBS and how it's just become shameful.
Yeah. Yeah. You do that.
And he's gone independent. As a result of being independent and doing the legwork, right? All the stuff that people said, Zev is crazy. Zev is talking crazy talk. It's conspiracy theories. It's all out there in the open. So
Yeah.
Zev's been on top of it for a while. So subscribe to Narrative, subscribe to Lev Remembers. And this has been The Left Hook, folks. I should rest, but I don't. In 7
Yeah.
minutes, I have David Korn, and another story is
Oh, that's a
some
good one,
breaking
David.
news. Oh, some breaking news is Trump says he's firing the agency's the commissioner because the commissioner told the truth about the job data that came out today. Where
Oh my God, he's firing him.
Yeah,
fired him. It just came out. It came out breaking news while we were talking. He's firing the commissioner of Bureau of Labor Statistics, Erica McCanterfer, because it was implied, literally not implied, because it's clear that the Trump administration manipulated the monthly data of job gains. There were massive job losses. So he's like, "You're fired." And also, the Smithsonian removes Trump's impeachment exhibit from
Wow.
the history. That was yesterday. Apparently, with just some breaking news right now,
By the
Federal
way,
Reserve Governor to resign early, giving Trump an immediate opening on the board. We're seeing the hollowing out, and also another huge story that came out. But I try to keep the receipts. Joe Kent, a literal promoter of conspiracy theories and white nationalism, who has been associated with extremists, is now running the Counterterrorism Center, folks. That was news from 2 days ago. So to break all that down, it's going to be David Korn in 5 minutes. He's great, of Mother Jones. And at 4:30, we have Allison of Mother She Wrote. Muller She Wrote. She's fantastic. She just decided at the last second to come in.
oh, Allison,
And
she's great. Allison's great, and
she just
David's
has a
great.
piece
Yeah.
out that someone waived Ghislaine Maxwell's sex offender status to move her to a minimum security camp in Texas. He has the
Wow.
sources. So that came out
Wow.
2 hours ago. I'm going to have Allison at 4:30. But folks, thank you for joining us. There's nearly 3,000 people watching. I know a lot of people joined late. We're going to have this entire conversation up on my Substack, Lev's Substack, and on Zev's Substack in about 30 minutes. We connect the dots, separate fact from fiction. You're going to hear a lot of stuff you don't hear in corporate media. Lev has his sources, Zev has his reporting. So I hope this was edifying and useful to you. If it was, please share it. I'm a terrible capitalist. There's no paywalls. Everything is for free. If you can become a paid subscriber, please do. This has been the Left Hook Substack. I'm talking to Lev Parnas, who at Lev Remembers, and Zev Shalev at Narrative. Lev, Zev, and Watch. And I'll be
Great
back in
punt,
4 minutes.
Great
Thanks
punt.
all.
Bye. Cheers.
Thank you.
Later.
Cheers.
Bye.